I have to confess, Susan, I absolutely love rom-coms, and the birds sing, and the music comes up, and the man runs into the woman's arms, or who, and I never stop to think, oh yeah, that's a movie. That's probably not really every day. And I think,
And also, there are all these crazy, stupid things like in Love Story, where, the line, love means never having to say you're sorry. It's like, how dumb is that? I mean,
what are you going to tell me? What, that's not true?
no, it's not.
I'm
There's a
absolutely
whole,
shocked and disappointed.
one of the chapters in Fierce Love is how to apologize, when and how to apologize in a way that really lands with your partner.
Fantastic. And welcome to the Fierce Love Podcast. I'm Gina London. Oh, sorry. I thought maybe you'd pick that up, but let's try that again. And welcome to the Fierce Love Podcast. I'm Gina London. Welcome to the Fierce Love Podcast. I'm Gina London, joined by best-selling author Susan Scott, the author of the book, Fierce Love. And today we're going to be dispelling those myths about love that Susan puts. I think what you've got the top 5 that you're going to talk through that really can mislead us. They can derail our relationships, and they can give us all of these over expectations that can really probably not be met or should be looked at in a different way. So let's dive right in. I'm looking forward to dispelling those myths, or hearing how to dispel those myths. Maybe let's start with one that is being able to apologize, because love doesn't mean never not saying that you're sorry, right?
Right. We do have to apologize. I mean, if I remember, when I think about my mother, I don't think she ever apologized for anything in her entire life. Just too proud to do it. But there is something so sweet when we say, I blew it. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I recognize my DNA on this. I recognize my fingerprints here. And here's what I'm going to do differently. And that actually, that's not one of the myths that I address, but it is one of the conversations that,
okay.
Yeah. So the first myth,
yes,
is you complete me. And I remember hearing, there was an actor, I don't remember who it was, and I wouldn't say even if I did, who had just sort of fallen in love with somebody, and he was saying, like, I feel like now I have my missing piece. And I was thinking how dangerous that is. And I understand the sentiment. I totally understand that. So we're not wrong to feel that way. And yet, nobody is our missing piece. If they are, well, what happens if that piece walks away? What if that piece turns out to be a piece of work? So, I mean, I really need to understand that it's not, do I like my life? Do I like my relationship? The question is, do I like myself in this relationship? Do I like myself in this life? And the very first conversation is, if you're asking yourself, do I want this relationship or this marriage, whatever it is, how do you answer that question? And you can't answer that question until you can first answer a different question, which is my life really working for me? Do I feel good about what I'm doing, how I'm showing up, how I'm thinking, how I'm presenting myself, the things that I'm accomplishing? Because if my life isn't necessarily working for me, it would be too easy to blame someone else for my unhappiness. And
yeah, and if you're putting that much pressure on the other person to be that missing piece, that's potentially doomed to failure right there, because they can't maintain that inevitably.
That's right. I have what they call the resting bitch face. I mean, I do. If I'm not actively smiling, I look like maybe I'm angry. And I remember someone who shall remain nameless who said, I wish you'd smile every time I walk into the room. It would make me feel better. And I said, that's not my job. That is not my job to make you feel better. My face is my face. And I don't want to feel like I have to smile every time you show up. So you don't complete me. I complete me or fail to complete myself.
Then how do we just, I want to go to another myth too, but I also want to unpack that a little bit too. Like, how do we look at our relationship then with the other person? I mean, we're not two people who are just living parallel lives, because our lives do intersect. And there are parts of us, like you said, that you want that other person. How does that other person make you feel? Not necessarily that they have to smile every single time, but we do want something from them. How do we balance that? I'm complete on my own, but yet I do want you in my life because you augment me. Is that how I should look at it? What's my solution for them, or my substitution for that myth?
Right. That's a great question. So in that chapter on that myth, there is an outline for a stump speech where I'm asking myself the questions: where am I going with my life? Why am I going there? Which is very important. How am I going to get there? And then who is going with me? And that is the last question that we answer. But once we know, here's where I'm going with my life, here's why I'm going there, what matters to me, here's how I think I'm going to go there. And then based on that, well, who's going to go with me? I want somebody to go with me who's going to get behind what I'm wanting to accomplish. I want to do the same thing for him or her. I want my partner to tell me if, when I share with them, here's what I'm wanting to accomplish. If they feel I'm off track, I would love for them to point it out. I'd love for them to say, hey, hang on, I thought this was super important to you, but some of the choices you've been making don't add up to that. I mean, that would be great. That is where you're partnering with an equal. You're really having these great conversations with one another, learning from one another all the time and checking in with one another. So it's never that your relationship becomes, unimportant. It's very, very important. But if I don't know what I'm trying to accomplish with my own life, it's pretty hard for me to know, what do I want from a partner? What do I
I
need? Yeah.
Wonderfully put, Susan. That is, because if that really does, again, back to the idea that all conversations are with myself and sometimes involve others. We probably need to have one of your foundational tenets. If you haven't already listened to the episode 1, you need to go back and listen to that, because Susan gives a great foundation of the 3 principles around our relationships are the conversation, or our conversations are the relationship. Our success in our relationships or failure happens gradually, then suddenly, and finally, as I was mentioning, that all our conversations are with myself. So if we're thinking that someone else is going to complete us, we probably need to have a conversation with ourselves, which it sounds like that road mapping that you have is a great way to help us get clarity around that, to bust that myth that someone else completes us.
Great. Well said. And in that chapter, I do share my own stump speech, so to speak. Not that anybody should copy it, but it just gives you an idea of, well, what it is, what it might look like, and then you write what's true for you. So that's one of the myths. You complete me. One of the other.
Right. And so, another myth, I think number 2 on that list then, was that love is unconditional. We talk about how much we love our pets because they give us unconditional love. And are we setting that same standard then for the human being that we have a relationship with? What do you say about that? Why is that a myth?
Yeah, no, I'll tell you a story about that. When a couple visited me a couple of years ago, and we were having wine and cheese, and they were telling me all about their lives and catching me up on what was happening. And somehow I just felt like there was something they weren't saying. And I eventually asked, is there something you're not telling me? And they got really quiet. The husband seemed to become smaller right in front of my eyes. And the wife said, well, he had an affair. He had an affair. It was horrible. It almost did us in. But we managed to work through it, and he ended the affair, and it's all good. And then she looked at him with these sort of adoring eyes, and she said, we believe that love is unconditional. And so there's nothing you could do that would ever cause me to leave you. And
Wow.
I remember shocking all three of us. I think I jumped out of my chair and said, take that back. You know, I mean, you've
Oh,
just,
Susan,
you've just,
intervention is happening in
well,
real time.
yeah, I mean, you've just given him permission to have all the affairs he wants to have because there won't be any consequences. And I included him in this rant that I was having. I said, I'm not suggesting that you're planning to have more affairs, but there's no, you've been given carte blanche. And so, couple of things. One is we teach people how to treat us and we get
Yeah.
what we tolerate. And if there are things that we're tolerating that don't feel good, we need to call it out. If there are behaviors or words that are hurtful to ourselves or to our children or our friends, we need to call it out and say, hey, that doesn't feel good. I'm not liking that. And so in that particular chapter, I say, look, there are conditions. There should always be conditions. And so it's important for you to clarify what are yours. For you to want to stay in this relationship, what are your conditions? And I don't mean things like, oh, it would be nice if he played the saxophone. I mean, it's not like that. It's about the non-negotiables, these few things. And there probably wouldn't be more than maybe 3 or 4 of them, but these few things are the conditions that must be in place for me to be happy, for me to be extremely happy in our relationship. And so to clarify those, share them with our partner, and then ask our partner, I really want to know 2 things. One is, your response to what I've said about my conditions, and then I want to hear from you about yours. Do you have similar conditions, different conditions? Hopefully our conditions will support one another. They won't cause problems, but it's really, really good to be clear about what's important to you in a relationship. What do you really require? And that's not to say that everybody's going to be perfect all the time. We're all imperfect. We have to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. And there are some things that are not okay. If that happens, it could be abuse, it could be affairs, it could be lying, it could be whatever it could be. I'm out. And that has to be really clear because, as I said, we teach people how to treat us. And if we don't intervene when something happens that doesn't feel good, then we have no one to blame but ourselves if it continues to happen.
And the
Right?
knowledge that yes, and the knowledge, yes, and the knowledge that we teach people how we want to be treated is paramount. And then the idea of what's the mechanism in order to establish new boundaries or to
Yeah.
create the boundaries from the first off if you haven't been in the relationship for a while, and just to have that conversation. Do you encourage timing around that? If some people are going to be listening to this podcast and reading your book, and maybe they've been in a relationship for 10 years and now maybe it seems like, oh, that's too late for me, or maybe they're just starting out but they feel like, oh, that's too much of a serious conversation to have an early phase of our relationship. Is there a best timing or a too late?
There's never a wrong time to have this conversation. You can have it early or late. If you're well into a relationship and by the way, this book is for people whose relationships are very sound. They just want to continually enrich their relationship and have some amazing conversations. But so,
And your book too has your book also, couples can get a workbook as part of it and work through some of the ideas together. I think that's a great tool that's offered as part of the Susan Scott Fierce Love experience and your own experience with that book, and to have that tool to work through with your partner on
you know,
some of these ideas.
and one of the things, if you're in a relationship, a long-term relationship, and there are a lot of things that are going well, how wonderful it would be to say to your partner, when I think about what's most important to me in a relationship, the things that are absolutely required for me to want to be in a relationship, to be happy, these things come up, and you have ticked all the boxes. You know, you are extraordinary, and I'm so grateful to you. It's one of the reasons why I go around smiling as much as I do, is because these things are in place with us. And then on the other hand, at some point, we might say, I was just reading this book and it was asking about, what are that love is not unconditional, that it is conditional, and what are the conditions? And so I thought about that and I realized these are mine. I thought I'd share them with you and see what you think. And what are yours? I mean, it's not a heavy conversation at all.
When you say it, that's the thing. I think, again, living my conversation in my head, there, as many who are listening probably are, might have thought that conversation out in a much heavier way than you just made it sound like. Oh, and by the way, would you like fish or chicken? It was so relaxed and just offhand seemingly, but I think that's that level of preparation maybe and framing that you put into it, so that when you do deliver that message, you are making sure that it doesn't sound so grave that it puts somebody else's back up. That was a lovely effortless way of probably not being an effortless thing, but making it seem that way anyway.
That's so important. Tone of voice is so important. Fierce conversations are loving. Fierce conversations are designed to enrich relationships, not harm them or end them. And they're very memorable. I mean, you and your partner will remember some of the conversations that you have as a result of this book and these. You'll remember them forever because they're going to be so sweet and powerful and clarifying and I mean,
enriching. You use the word enrich a lot, and I just love that, the connotation of that word. You can enrich your relationship, and like you said, if you're listening to this podcast and your relationship is strong, that's great. This can help enrich it. If your relationship is beginning, you can think about how to purposefully enrich it. If you're having difficulty, it's here for you too, but it's not only for a rocky relationship. It's got elements that are going to be wonderful no matter where you are in duration or depth of your relationship.
Well said. Well said.
So and that reminds me, you were talking about the list that somebody said you tick every box. So that leads us right into that third myth that you can dispel for us now. You must fulfill my list. You must. You're required.
Here are all the things on my list of my ideal partner, And I remember a friend of mine who showed me her list, and I could not believe it. Her list was like 2 pages long. It was ridiculous. No one person could live up to all of that. So I think one of my friends showed me her list, and it only had 4 things on it. And one of those things with a man she was dating said, your Star Wars Death Star lamp is not coming into my home.
That was on the conditions list as well.
Yeah. So I think it is useful to create a list of your ideal partner, but my take on it is create your list and then be your list. Your list. This is up to you. You model the things that are on your list. For example, there's a poem that I love about, keep me from going to sleep too soon. Come wake me up in the night and tell me that the moon is doing something to the stars that they never did before, et cetera, et cetera. And I've always thought, oh, that would be so wonderful. And then I realized I need to be the person who keeps me from going to sleep too soon. I need to be the person who wakes up my partner and says, hey, come outside and check this out. I mean, so if I'm waiting for someone else to bring to the relationship this whole set of qualities and behaviors and actions and characteristics, then I might be disappointed because not everybody's going to be able to do that. But if I'm focused on myself and even asking myself, what would it be like to be on the receiving end of me? Would I be extremely happy in my company or not? I mean, what might somebody else have on their list that I'm not living up to. So if you're going to write a list, that's okay, but be your list. Don't put it off on somebody else.
Oh, I really love that, Susan. Do you recommend, alongside the idea of the conditions that would be important in our relationship, to share each other's lists or to bring up the idea of lists? Or is this a for me and for me to
I,
enact or behave
I
or
think it's
embody those attributes?
I think it's for me, but here's what you could do with
Mhm.
that. So here, you'd say, I've thought about the things that really matter the most to me in a partner, but I realize that it's very important for me to embody these things, and I want to share them with you,
Mm.
and I want you to tell me if you feel like I'm, give me a grade. Do I get an A here? Do I get an F here? Do I get a C plus? Do I have to stay after school? I mean, how am I doing on these things that are really important, that I want to embody these things? And do these things matter to you? Or, do I need a whole new list?
That's an excellent way of looking at it, is if you prepare the list, make those be the attributes that you are wanting to embody, and have your partner respond to them about how you're doing on those. And that gives you an awareness conversation without having it be, well, these are things I also want you to do. You can kind of raise the awareness of the other person, but also take ownership for them yourself. Oh, Susan, you're very good. Very good. Maybe that could be why, ladies and gentlemen, that she's in the position that she's in. But it's so powerful to take these apart and unpack them and then put them back together in a way that makes us take some accountability, for one, but also takes the pressure off, maybe, for having all of these false myths or false expectations around what love should, or relationship should or shouldn't be. And I think that in of itself is a very fierce approach. This second section in your book is really powerful, which brings us to myth 4 of the 5 that you dispel. And this one I really love too. How many of, especially ladies, I'm going to call it out on this, we expect our partners to be mind readers. And the myth is, well, if you loved me, you'd know. I'm guilty, I admit,
Yeah.
on
Yeah. And
more than one occasion.
well, I am too. I have been too in the past. I remember, sometimes I wish my husband would come up behind me and put his arms around me, like if I'm standing at the sink or something. I wish he would come over here and snuggle with me. And then I finally realized, well, why don't I go put my arms around my husband? Why don't I get up out of my chair and go over and snuggle with, why don't I do those things? And if there's something that I really want that isn't happening, then I can ask for it. I can say, would you be willing to do so and so? This would mean a lot to me, and ask and clarify, because nobody can read our minds. Sometimes we don't even know what we're thinking, much less somebody else. So I've told my friends and family, you might have to hit me alongside the head with a 2x4 to get my attention, to let me know that something is happening that you like or you don't like, because I won't always pick it up. I don't pick up always on these subtle hints. Tell me what you want, so that I can say yes or maybe or I don't think so or whatever. Yeah. So I need to be
And,
clear about that.
and again, the way that you gave your example of, hey, asking them, the tone was casual. It
Yeah.
wasn't again, you didn't wait. You're not waiting for the suddenly, I'm fed up because you've never put your arms around me after 5 years. And I've been wanting it every day for each of these 5 years. And I'm going to
Yeah.
blow my top like Mount Vesuvius here.
No, how wonderful it is when we simply um, do the thing, we model the behavior that we want from somebody else. And also that we communicate very clearly something that is important to us that our partner may or may not have known. I'm just not good at reading people. I remember I was in the car. I was not married at the time. I was in the car with this friend of mine, this male friend of mine, and he was saying, "How come you're not married? I don't understand that." And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm terrible at picking up clues. If somebody was interested in me, they'd practically have to drape themselves over the windshield for me to get that message. And after a while, he said, could you pull over for a minute? And I pulled over, and he got out of the car and draped himself across the windshield. And I thought that was the sweetest, loveliest thing that he did. And he said, do you get it?
Oh my gosh, Susan, that is, the visual of that is fantastic. And that poor guy, he's like, what more can I do? Oh, okay, now I know. And here it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I never have been good at picking up on hints. In fact, several times when some man has said, I love you, I say, yeah, I love you too, thinking it's just a brother or sister kind of a thing.
And, alongside the idea of asking and
Yeah.
asking early and re-asking or requesting or what have you, as opposed to letting it percolate until it just explodes, is then the idea that our love, whatever the word love means in some respects, because we're learning through this book what love actually means. It's not a destination. It's all of these conversations, and it's not that one warm feeling. It's what we do day to day. So love is all you need. Thank you for the song title, but is it enough? What does that title mean? What do we do with that?
I mean, love is, I think, the most important thing. It is. And we nurture it by, all these little moments of connection, conversations that help us connect with this person who's important to us, help us connect with that person at a deep level. And we do need other things in our lives. We need friends, we need health, we need cash, we need satisfying careers or happy children. I mean, we need maybe a role in the community. We need to go out for a long walk. We need to have a dog in our lives. We need to write
or
that.
In the case of you too.
Yes, 2 dogs. We need to go, stop talking about wanting to write a book and write it. We need to be fully engaged in all kinds of things that appeal to us, that are calling to us. And when we do that, our love, boy, it just expands. Because we are happy, we are fulfilled, we have so much more to give to our partner, and our partner sees this happy, fulfilled, glowing human being, which he or she is even more attracted to now, because we're, woe is me is not an attractive narrative. We want to be with people who are, for the most part, happy. We can all have a bad day from time to time, but for the most part, we want to be people who feel pretty good about themselves and their lives.
And again, with that idea of not putting too much pressure on that idea of one person and the love is go in and finding the attributes that you can do better for yourself, finding the other aspects of your life that can fulfill you, not having the person complete you, but finding ways that you can complete yourself so you can be happier for that person and maybe smile every time that they come home and see.
Maybe.
Maybe, depending. Oh, Susan, there are so many powerful nuggets. If only we can read, absorb, and apply in a gradual, purposeful way. I'm so thrilled once again to learn and listen to you in our second podcast on the Fierce Love Podcast. It's a book, it's a podcast, it's a way of life, people. And I'm thrilled to have Susan Scott, the author and the force behind the Fierce Love, with us today. Again, I'm Gina London, and this is Fierce Love.